You know, there's something incredibly profound about the idea of bread. It's simple, yet it carries so much weight. It's a staple in our diets, a universal symbol of sustenance and life. But when we talk about bread in a spiritual sense, especially in the context of faith, it transforms into something much more significant. It becomes a metaphor for our deepest hunger, our search for meaning and our longing for connection. Let's take a moment to think about the story of the manna in the desert. The Israelites were wandering, lost in the wilderness, and they cried out for food. God provided them with manna, bread from heaven, a miraculous gift that sustained them during their journey. But here's the thing, that bread was temporary. It filled their stomachs for a day, but it didn't offer them lasting life. It was a band-aid for their immediate need, not a solution for their eternal hunger. And yet, they revered it. They looked back on it as a sign of God's provision. Now, fast forward to the New Testament, where Jesus, the son of Joseph, steps into the scene and says something radical. He claims to be the bread of life. I mean, can you imagine? This ordinary man, someone they thought they knew, suddenly declares that he is the very sustenance they need. Not just for their physical bodies, but for their souls. He's saying, I am what you've been searching for. I am the true bread that comes down from heaven. It's a bold statement, one that challenges everything they believed. They had their traditions, their rituals, and their expectations. They wanted signs and miracles to validate his claims. What work do you do? They asked him. Show us something that proves you are who you say you are. And Jesus responds with a promise that's almost too good to be true. He who comes to me will never hunger, and he who believes in me will never thirst. It's a beautiful invitation, isn't it? To come and find fulfillment, to find a source of life that doesn't run dry. But then, he goes even further. He talks about eating his flesh and drinking his blood. Now, that's where things get a little messy. People start to murmur, questioning how on earth he can ask such a thing. It's scandalous. It sounds grotesque. But what he's really getting at is the depth of communion he desires with us. He's not talking about a physical act, he's talking about a profound spiritual connection. Think about it. Eating and drinking are acts of intimacy. They require trust. When we share a meal with someone, we're engaging in a relationship. Jesus is inviting us into a relationship that goes beyond mere belief. He's saying, if you want to truly live, you need to consume me. You need to take me into your very being. And here's the kicker. He acknowledges that not everyone will accept this invitation. He knows that some will turn away, that the message will be too hard for some to bear. But to those who stay, to those who choose to believe, he offers the promise of eternal life. All that the Father gives me will come to me, he assures us, and I will not cast them out. This is where it gets personal. Maybe you're sitting there wondering if you really belong. Maybe you feel like your past disqualifies you from this invitation. But Jesus is clear. He won't turn you away. He's here for the broken, the weary, the lost. He's here for you. Now, let's talk about what it means to truly believe. It's not just about acknowledging that he exists or that he was a good teacher. Belief is about trust. It's about surrendering your life to him and allowing him to fill the voids that nothing else can. It's about recognizing that, just like the Israelites in the desert, we can't sustain ourselves on our own. We need something greater, something divine. When Jesus says, "This is the bread that came down from heaven," he's inviting us to partake in something life-changing. It's not just about a momentary fix. It's about a transformation that lasts. It's about being nourished by his words, his love, and his sacrifice. It's about letting that bread of life permeate every aspect of our being, shaping who we are and how we live. And here's the beauty of it all. When we eat of this bread, we don't just receive life for ourselves. We become vessels of that life to others. We are called to share the bread of life with those around us, to extend that invitation to those who are hungry for hope, for purpose, for belonging. So, as we reflect on these profound truths, I encourage you to ask yourself, what does it mean for you to come to the table? What does it look like for you to embrace Jesus as the bread of life in your everyday existence? Because in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, we have a promise that grounds us. We have a source of life that is unshakable, unwavering, and eternal. Let's not settle for the temporary bread of this world. Let's reach for the true bread that brings life to our souls. Because in the end, it's not just about surviving. It's about thriving in the fullness of life that Jesus offers. And that, my friends, is the invitation that changes everything. You know, there's something profound about the way we often overlook the simplest truths in life. We get so caught up in the chaos, the noise, the pressures of daily existence, that we forget to stop and reflect on the messages that have been handed down to us through generations. Take the Beatitudes, for instance. They're not just ancient words, they're a roadmap, a guide for how to navigate this tumultuous journey we call life. When we hear, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth," it's easy to dismiss it as a quaint saying, something that sounds nice but doesn't really apply to our modern lives. But what if we took a moment to really unpack that? Meekness isn't weakness. It's strength wrapped in humility. It's the quiet resilience of those who choose to respond with grace rather than aggression. In a world that often equates power with volume, the meek stand as a testament to a different kind of strength. They're the ones who bear burdens without complaint, who show kindness when faced with hostility, and who choose peace over conflict. Imagine how transformative it could be if we all embraced that kind of meekness in our daily lives. What if instead of retaliating when we're wronged, we chose to turn the other cheek? And then there's the promise of comfort for those who mourn. Mourning is an incredibly personal experience. It's raw, it's painful, and it's something we all encounter at different points in our lives. It's easy to feel isolated in grief, as if no one truly understands the depth of our loss. Yet this blessing reminds us that there's a divine promise woven into our sorrow. We're not alone in our pain. There's a comfort that comes from acknowledging our grief, from allowing ourselves to feel and process it, rather than burying it deep down. Think about it. When we allow ourselves to mourn, we open the door to healing. It's a paradox, really. In our vulnerability, we find strength. In our sorrow, we discover hope. And that's not just a cliché, it's a reality that countless people have experienced. Then we move on to the idea of hungering and thirsting for righteousness. In a world where so many are content to turn a blind eye to injustice, those who yearn for what is right are like beacons in the dark. They remind us that we have a responsibility to stand up for the marginalized, to advocate for those whose voices are silenced. It's not enough to simply wish for change. We must actively pursue it. And that pursuit can be exhausting, but it's also incredibly rewarding. When we align our actions with our values, we not only satisfy our own hunger for righteousness, but we also inspire others to join us in that quest. The Beatitudes also speak to mercy, purity of heart, and peacemaking, all qualities that seem to be in short supply these days. It's so easy to get caught up in the cycle of retribution, to respond to negativity with more negativity. But mercy is a radical choice. It's choosing to forgive when it would be easier to hold a grudge. It's extending compassion to those who don't deserve it, recognizing that we're all flawed, all human. And what about purity of heart? In a world filled with distractions and superficiality, the call to be pure in heart is a challenge. It invites us to examine our motives, to seek authenticity in our relationships and our actions. It's about aligning our inner selves with our outward expressions. When we live from a place of purity, we see the world through a different lens. We become more attuned to the beauty around us and more capable of seeing the divine in others. Now let's talk about the peacemakers. They're often the unsung heroes, the ones who step into conflict with a desire to heal rather than to harm. In a society that glorifies division, the peacemakers remind us of the power of unity. They show us that it's possible to disagree without being disagreeable. They challenge us to listen more and shout less, to find common ground rather than focusing on what separates us. And then there's the promise of the kingdom of heaven for those who suffer persecution for righteousness' sake. This is perhaps one of the most challenging aspects of the Beatitudes. It's easy to stand up for what's right when it's convenient, but true courage comes when we're willing to face backlash for our beliefs. History is filled with examples of those who have suffered for their convictions, and their stories remind us that standing up for truth often comes at a cost. But the reward, as promised, is greater than any earthly struggle. As we reflect on these teachings, we must also consider the call to be the salt and light of the earth. Salt enhances flavor. It preserves. It's a reminder that we have a role to play in our communities. We can't just sit back and watch as the world becomes bland and tasteless. We must actively contribute to the richness of life, bringing our unique gifts to the table. And light? Light dispels darkness. It guides. It illuminates. We're called to shine brightly, to let our actions speak louder than our words. When we live authentically, when we embody the values we hold dear, we can't help but draw others toward that light. So the next time you hear the Beatitudes, don't just let them wash over you. Take a moment to reflect on their implications. Consider how you can embody these principles in your own life. The world is in desperate need of meekness, mercy, and righteousness. It's time for us to rise to the occasion, to embrace the blessings that are waiting for us, and to share them with those around us. After all, we're all in this together, and together we can create a world that reflects the very best of what it means to be human. Imagine standing at the threshold of a vast and intricate landscape, a world filled with choices, paths, and the echoes of countless voices. Each decision you make is like a step into the unknown, and yet, there's a guiding principle that resonates through the ages, a principle that whispers to the heart of humanity. And to him who knocks, it will be opened. It's a promise of accessibility, a reminder that the divine is not distant or aloof, but rather intimately involved in the lives of those who seek. Think about it for a moment. What kind of father would hand his child a stone when they ask for bread? Or a snake when they crave a fish? The very idea is absurd. It's a poignant illustration of the relationship between a parent and a child, a relationship rooted in love and care. If even those who are flawed, who sometimes stumble in their judgment, know how to give good gifts to their children, how much more can we expect from a Father in heaven who is pure love? This is not merely a theological assertion. It's a profound truth that invites us to approach with confidence, to ask, to seek, and to knock, knowing that good things await those who earnestly seek them. Now let's take this a step further. There's a golden rule hidden within this narrative. So whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them. This is the essence of empathy, the heart of compassion. It's a call to action, a challenge to live with intention and kindness. Imagine a world where this principle is not just known but practiced. A world where we treat others not just as we would like to be treated, but as we would hope to be treated in our most vulnerable moments. It's a radical shift in perspective, one that could transform relationships and communities. But with this call to kindness comes a warning. Enter through the narrow gate. It's a stark reminder that the path to true life is not always the easiest one. The wide gate, the broad way, may seem inviting, filled with instant gratification and fleeting pleasures, but it leads to destruction. Many choose this path, drawn by the allure of convenience and conformity, but few find the narrow way that leads to life. This narrow path is often filled with challenges, requiring perseverance, integrity, and a willingness to stand apart from the crowd. As we navigate this journey, we must be vigilant against false prophets, those who appear harmless but are, in truth, ravenous wolves. They come cloaked in sheep's clothing, offering messages that may resonate superficially, but lead us astray. The fruits of their actions reveal their true nature. Just as we don't gather grapes from thorns or figs from thistles, we must discern the true character of those who influence us. Are their actions consistent with the teachings of love, compassion, and truth? Or do they lead us down a path of division and despair? It's essential to recognize that not everyone who claims to speak in the name of the divine is genuinely aligned with that purpose. Not everyone who says, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven. This is a sobering thought, a reminder that our actions must align with our words. It's not enough to profess a belief, we must embody it, living out the principles of love and service in our daily lives. The call to do the will of the Father is an invitation to a profound relationship, one that transcends mere ritual and enters the realm of authentic connection. Consider the parable of the wise and foolish builders. The wise man, who builds his house on the rock, represents those who hear and act upon these teachings. When the storms of life come, when the rains descend, the streams rise, and the winds blow, his house stands firm. It's a testament to the strength that comes from a foundation rooted in truth and faith. In contrast, the foolish man builds on sand, ignoring the wisdom available to him. When the inevitable storms come, his house falls, and great is its fall. This parable serves as a powerful metaphor for the choices we make in life. Are we building on a foundation of solid principles, or are we allowing the shifting sands of popular opinion and fleeting desires to dictate our choices? Forgiveness, too, plays a crucial role in this narrative. When Peter asks how many times he should forgive his brother, he suggests 7 times, a number that seems generous. But the response he receives is staggering. Not 7 times, but 70 times 7. This radical call to forgiveness challenges us to let go of our grudges, to release the burdens that weigh us down. It's a reminder that holding on to anger and resentment only serves to imprison us. The parable of the unforgiving servant illustrates this beautifully. The servant who has been forgiven an enormous debt fails to extend that same mercy to a fellow servant who owes him a fraction of what he owed. His lack of compassion leads to dire consequences, a powerful reminder that the grace we receive must flow through us to others. So, what does this mean for us in our daily lives? It means we must cultivate a spirit of generosity and forgiveness, recognizing that we are all flawed individuals on a journey of growth. It means understanding that the path to life is often narrow and fraught with challenges, but those challenges are what shape us into the people we are meant to be. We are called to be wise builders, constructing our lives on a foundation of love, truth, and compassion. In a world that often feels chaotic and overwhelming, these teachings provide a guiding light. They remind us that we are not alone, that there is a divine presence that cares deeply for us and desires for us to thrive. As we navigate the complexities of life, we must hold fast to these principles, allowing them to inform our choices, our relationships, and our understanding of ourselves and others. Let us be intentional in our actions, treating others with the same kindness and respect we wish to receive. Let us seek the narrow path, even when it's difficult, trusting that it leads to true fulfillment. And let us extend grace and forgiveness, recognizing that we are all in need of mercy. As we embrace these truths, we not only enrich our own lives, but also contribute to a world that reflects the love and compassion we are called to embody. Ultimately, it's about connection. Connection to the divine, to ourselves, and to one another. It's about recognizing the sacredness in every interaction, the potential for transformation in every moment. So, let us knock on the door of opportunity. Let us seek the path that leads to life. And let us build our lives on the solid rock of truth and love. In doing so, we will find not only our own fulfillment, but also the ability to uplift those around us, creating a ripple effect of kindness and compassion that echoes through the ages.